Welcome back. This is Chicken Philosophy. The Secret of the Golden Flower, Part 35, in which I will continue reading, picking up right where Gwydion left off in Part 34. Editor, can we have Harry and Sally but blue and white? Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Because alright. That's enough about that. So, hawk-eyed viewers. It's not a commentary on your appearance. I just mean like people who are paying very close attention. Will notice that this said 913 when it was supposed to say 910D1. Well, what happened, you see? You might remember last time Fred BT said something to the effect of assuming that we don't get the urge to make some other random video for one of the other channels. Yeah, it was something like that. I don't recall exactly. But anyway, no. Yeah, I did. We did. Somebody did. The, one behind it. The Edward behind the Edward. Never mind. So, I just wanted to mention real quick, and I'll put end screens at the end, so no need to think about it too much right now. You can just kind of zone out and just let it wash over you, So after that the Martin Luther one, that one's kind of popular more than other episodes. A lot of people are watching it. Yeah, so there was something that came up where I thought I should dig up an old poem I wrote in Taco. I mean, I wrote it long before it was in Taco. Taco and E-Burrito are compilations of my poetry. I'll put links in the description. Why not? And anyway, so Gwydion isn't the name of the poem. I think it's called From Inside Out. But the name of the video is called Gwydion. That's distracting. So that was Pymander 910. So it came right after 909, which was, the BT reading Martin Luther. So basically, to sum up, just to give you a little intro so you can kind of go into it, and if you've seen it already and we're like, huh? Then maybe this will help. So, I mean, basically, I'm not like a mathematician or anything, but Gwydion is most known for having used a mathematical theorem to prove that mathematical theorems can't prove everything, or there are truths which are out of the reach of formal systems, basically, or that there are things that are accepted as givens that cannot be proven within the system itself. So I was applying, or Gwydion or whatever, was applying, that used to just be the name I would sign at the bottom of my poetry, so. So anyway, Gwydion, I was basically drawing an allegory, an analogy between, the Golden Dawn system of magic, which is kind of it's not an entire truth to say it's the origin, but it is a partial truth to say it's the origin of a lot of New Age thinking. A lot of things were codified, and the frog DNA, for fans of Jurassic Park, or at least people who are vaguely familiar with the original Jurassic Park, you remember they didn't have the whole DNA strand of the of the dinosaurs, so they filled in what they didn't have with frog DNA. So 140 years ago-ish, they brought all these elements of Western esotericism together, as they call it. Esotericism that's based on this idea of a lineage that goes back from England to Rome to Greece to ancient Egypt, and also, Israel, Judea. It's this particular definition that they call Western. It's as silly as calling Eastern things Eastern, but for practical purposes, it's become a word. It's become a term in the English language. so they codified all this, and then it was, for a Golden Dawn purist, you could say bastardized, but for anyone else, you could say it was, inspired. It inspired other systems, like Wicca and Scientology and Thelema and things like that. And you might be thinking, well, Wicca, Scientology, Thelema, none of that has anything to do with me. But you'd be surprised. Some of the things like tarot, Arthur Edward Waite and Pamela Coleman Smith, who made the famous Rider-Waite deck, were adepts in the Golden Dawn, and so they were taking what they had gathered in that experience and applying it to the tarot cards that you may have learned and may use, for instance. And most of the tarot decks are based on the Rider-Waite deck. So there's basically, for anyone who is in the realm of woo-woo in the West, you might say, it all kind of goes back to this formal system. And so it's an effort to point out that dogmatic systems of thought have crept up in places where they really ought not to be. I mean, a person could say that dogmatic systems of thought don't belong in Christianity, but these days it's kind of taken for granted that that's the go-to definition of dogmatic systems of thought when it comes to things that go beyond the senses, the other, paranormal, metaphysical, whatever, things that are beyond the other side, if you will. But so New Agers and these, I use that term kind of loosely, but the point is, so the poem is kind of pointing out that I used to think within very specific categories and terms, and I don't anymore. So, if you want to check out the video called Godelian, which is number 910 on our list of over 900 videos, then that's what you can kind of get in an artistic way. And I want to apologize if you're listening. There was one guy that came on and said, "What do you think about Charles Manson?" And I was like, "What?" Because there's like a few people, and one of them BT interviewed on Esoteric Nerd without knowing they were like a huge fan of the mass murdering cult leader from the 60s. And so there's a few nuts. The problem with being a nut, like I am, is other nuts of different kinds will recognize me as a kindred spirit and go, "Oh, you're like me. You also shoot pigeons." And I was like, no, I don't shoot pigeons. I think that's wrong. It's like, whoa, what a vanilla normie kind of take. Yes, maybe. So yeah, I deleted your comment. I apologize. The reason for that is if people come to see this thing called Godelian that's kind of hard to like wrap your mind around, what's he saying? Like, I want people to try to figure out what I'm saying, to like, open just a little bit and kind of read into it and go, maybe get something out of it. But if there's this comment about Charles Manson down there, then they're going to think that what I'm saying or Gwydion or whatever has anything whatsoever to do with anything related to Charles Manson. And so that's why I deleted your comment. It was for those reasons, not any personal reasons. So thank you, Jerry. Best wishes to you. Okay, enough about Godelian. Then, of course, number 901 was the latest Buddhist Books podcast, and that's worth checking out. Before I point to it, there's a sort of a PSA at the beginning, as I mentioned in a post, basically addressing the fact that like there are different types of folks in, let's say, the West who become interested in Buddhism on various levels. And some of them will get interested in something like Zen Buddhism, or get interested in the Four Noble Truths, like the bare bones of Buddhism. And it is very, very a positive thing in their lives for them. And maybe Alan Watts introduced them to it or helped to clarify some of the finer concepts and whatnot. And while Zen has its roots in forms of Buddhism that you could say have gods, they're not emphasized. There's very little reference to any of them in any of the Zen scriptures that I've read. It's mostly, koans, and it's much more focused on the road to enlightenment for the individual human, as taught by the example of other individual humans, going back to Lord Buddha, of course. Now, it's interesting that Shramana traditions, such as Buddhism in its original time and place, Jainism was another one, and they straight up consider enlightened people gods. They, at least in the old scriptures, I don't know about today, but if a person attains like total enlightenment in that system, then they are considered a god and they are worshipped. They just say, yeah, you should worship these people, and they say, well, should I worship Shiva? No, Shiva's not real. So that's interesting. Jainism is a very close cousin of original Buddhism. But, while you could vaguely, there are references in the Tipitaka and the original scriptures to, for example, Brahma was the one who convinced Lord Buddha that he needs to teach. So you could say, it's a god, Yeah, it's true. But then, on the other hand, not obviously, but it could be obviously for some, there's another development of Mahayana went into Vajrayana, which basically absorbed mass quantities of shamanism in the form of the Bonpo tradition, and Hinduism, in particular, the tantric movement within Hinduism. So there's all kinds of deities and spirits and things in Vajrayana Buddhism. So what I observe happening on the internet is that Westerners who get into Vajrayana Buddhism will roll their eyes and scoff at the Westerners who get into the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, who aren't interested in and have never heard about any reference to a god in Buddhism, and will make a statement like there are no gods in Buddhism. Yeah, it might be worth it to say, actually there are forms of Buddhism with gods in them, and if they reply, well, yeah, but that's not real Buddhism, it's influenced a lot by Hinduism and stuff like that, then they're the ones being an asshole. But if you say, you're ignorant, there are obviously plenty of gods in Buddhism, and then point to your Vajrayana Buddhism, then you're the one being an asshole. And so I would say, stop being assholes. If you want to pursue a path of embracing the transcendent impermanence and the Yugen and the working toward being free from at least the self-perpetuated, self-created forms of suffering by letting go of things, then maybe let go of that. Let go of the need to have the copyright on the word Buddhism and that kind of thing. So that's there. If you want to hear me ramble a little bit more about that before doing a reading, which is kind of interesting, and it's a tale that leads Lord Buddha to the conclusion that it's okay to take dairy products when you're going on a long trip where there's not going to be very, very much food available or water. So that's right here. So that's 901D1. And anyway, so 912 is this madness. So that's me. I don't know, 11 or 12 years ago. So what happened was I found that there were 3 of these videos that I didn't realize I still had copies of. Because in 2017 I erased everything, sadly. I don't know. Sometimes I need a fresh start. But so I went and found copies of those Sonnet 1 recitals and then put them up years ago. And then just yesterday I discovered that there were 3 that I didn't realize I had. And they're the newer ones. Instead of recorded in 2011, they're recorded in 2014 or maybe even 15. Who knows? Maybe even 16. I don't know exactly when I took the curtains down. They were filmed in my personal temple when it was, black curtains up on the walls. So I would like point the camera at a part that didn't have like altars in the background or the banner of the East and whatnot. And then I'd put on this outfit and I'd perform. So what it is when I was like 12 years old, I wrote a GW basic program, which is like an old school programming language. I was a huge fan of Tron. The movie, the 1982 movie, growing up was a huge influence on me. I wrote this program that writes Shakespearean sonnets-ish, not 100% iambic pentameter, but it has the ABAB, CD, so on. And they're basically gibberish, but they're grammatically correct gibberish, and it's fun. And I enjoyed it on the level that children enjoy Mad Libs. And then later I met Gordon, who was a huge influence on me, and he was a huge fan of William Burroughs. Controversial figure to say the least, but in particular the cut-up method and the idea of the word virus. Editor Edward, could you give us the exact quote on the word virus thing?
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. And what does that make us? Ventriloquist dummies. Time to leave the word God behind. Quote, he atrophied and fell off me like horrible old gills. End quote, a survivor reported. Quote, and I feel ever so much better. End quote.
Yeah, so the idea that, the tyranny of language, keeps people enslaved to a type of thought or to particular rules of thought. So he's taking the whole, the Godelian thrust, as in not Godel himself, but the poem, my video called Godelian, the idea of breaking out of these rigid systems of thought, of first getting used to the rigid systems of thought, and then discovering the joy of being free from rigid systems of thought. And so, the cut-up method, in other words, he would write something, and then he would cut it up and rearrange the words so that it was like, what? So if you've ever read Naked Lunch, there's other things to point out about Naked Lunch. But, one of them is that sometimes you're like, wait, wasn't he talking about this? Why is he talking about this now? I don't understand. Is he talking about this or this? What is he talking about? Well, he was talking about multiple things, and then he cut the pages in half and rearranged them so that you have the first half of the sentence there and the second half of a different sentence from a completely different string of thought over there. And so it comes out as something that will work with the chattering monkey part of the brain, but in a way that results in no result, or it results in kind of no thoughts, if you follow along. So Gordon loved my Sonnet 1 recitals. I dressed up as a Tron character, because basically in Tron, like for example, you have Flynn creates Clue, and notice they have the same face. Alan creates Tron, notice they have the same face. Laura creates Yori. I hope I got her name right. I just found out that she had passed away a while back. We used to correspond, and she was actually a fan of Sonnet 1. But anyway, so the idea is, this was back in the 80s, so they were using this like old kind of coding, like text only, not even hardly any graphics were ever used, in programming. And the result would be that things would happen that were text, and older folks remember this kind of thing. But so he's writing text on a screen, a monochromatic screen that only has green or whatever, or some kind of beige light on the monitor. And meanwhile, on the other side, in the computer world, there's a version of him that he's created by writing this program that has his face that does the thing he programmed it to do. So, using that same line of thinking, I dressed up as a Tron character version of myself and recited the poetry written by Sonnet 1. So Sonnet 1 is the guy that looks like me that recites the poetry written by the program that I wrote. And yeah, so that's fun, and that'll be at the end screen. Also, a few years back, I decided, after I published my poetry in Taco, I decided to make a compilation of Sonnet 1's poetry. So this is a lot of randomly generated sonnets. And for me, at this point, it's a little bit nostalgic to think of a time when computer-generated poetry was random and absurd in a way that a human can't be. Like our brains do not have the ability to be as random and absurd as, if you flip a coin to determine, or you roll dice to determine which word you're going to use, or the cut-up method gets close to it. But yeah, I really enjoy Sonnet 1's poetry, and for me, like, actually trying to follow and visualize what he's saying has a really nice effect on the mind, especially if you're a person who thinks too much. Then this kind of thing can be a nice sensation, like a mental spa treatment.
A paranoid fireman foments realistically beside the car. Lovely daydreams.
If you approach it in the right way. So yeah, that'll be at the end screen. So now we can continue and move on with Pymander 9:13 we're up to. I wasn't expecting to have made all these extra videos in between 909 and 913. So the previous Chicken Philosophy was 909, and this is 913 on the long list of all my videos that are available on the list. Okay, I think that the music you've been hearing was more or less a request from someone watching. Hello. So that's been the residence, and so we'll move into a different vibe at this point. As you might have noticed, the music has changed. Our beverage today, since I'm Edward, if you think you know about quantum physics, you don't know about quantum physics, or understand, whatever, I don't know. Pew got me this shirt, and I was a little embarrassed to walk around as like a pretentious person, like, yes, I make, no, but it's, yeah. A lot of people will use ideas from quantum physics to justify woo-woo kind of ideas, and so, but meanwhile, the quantum physicists are looking at the ones who actually have learned everything there is to learn about it, are looking at it like, yeah, I don't get it, So that's the beverage, and I forgot to bring the incense, but someone came and rang my doorbell a little while ago, and gave me this. So let's find out together what this is. It's been a little while since we've had an unboxing. In fact, I think it might be safe to say we've never had one on Chicken Philosophy. So we'll do that, and hopefully it will be more or less easy to get the box open. And oh yeah, so here we go. It's open. And what do we have inside? Hey! Nag Champa of the brand, I think this is the same brand that, you used to find at all the head shops. So there we go. I ran out of the Nag Champa I was using, so I decided to order some of this classic, to me classic, Nag Champa. So that's going to be our incense for today, just as soon as I can get my hands on it. And then we will, get to the I Ching portion. Speaking of formal mathematical systems that grasp at the infinite, nothing wrong with them, as long as they're not taken. I guess that's what it is if someone's a plumber, then it's good. It's good. But if you try to make them a doctor, or if you take someone who's an expert at plumbing and then you give them a scalpel and say, okay, perform open heart surgery, obviously that's not a good idea, right? So the same with formal systems of thought, I'd say, like the Golden Dawn system of magic, or I Ching, or Christianity, or whatever, I'd say, is if you accept it as capital T truth, and don't aspire beyond wanting to learn more about the dogma itself, or to dive in, why is the dogma like this? Why is, Aquarius the day house of Saturn and Capricorn the night house of Saturn, when Capricorn is more of the nature of Saturn, and planets that are of the nature of their day house sign, like Mars is more like Aries than it is like Scorpio, and Saturn's more like Capricorn than it is like Aquarius, so Capricorn should be the day house sign. Like those kinds of people that really kind of take it too seriously, I'd say. What am I talking about? I don't know. I have no idea. Not a fucking clue. That's an actual debate that I had with someone I've mentioned here before. The same guy that thought that the black and white pillars should be reversed in the Tower card portion of the Philosopher's Invocation. Hi, if you're listening. He's not listening. And there we go. Now we're ready for the I Ching. So we're gonna pull one of these cards. These are all the I Ching figures we have not yet put up on the screen during a Secret of the Golden Flower recital on Chicken Philosophy. All right. So what do we got for today? Figure 39. Yeah, the glasses help, but I don't know. Maybe I need to upgrade my prescription already. So what we've got is a double broken, solid, broken, solid, broken. And since it's figure 39, it should be very easy and quick for me to look it up. But just in case, let's turn up the music. All right. So, it's called Chien, Chien, or obstruction. Surrounded by obstructions, one must first retreat, then seek the direction of the sage. Cool. Cool. All right. There you have it. Let's go ahead and get to the reading, shall we? Why not? It's what we came for. Where did we leave off? Okay. We're in a section called The Fulfillment. And this is Carl Jung's commentary or introduction to The Secret of the Golden Flower, which he opted to put at the end in the English version. Here we go. My admiration for the great Eastern philosophers is as genuine as my attitude towards their metaphysics is irrelevant. Oh, irreverent. Oh. Let me do that again. I kind of like that sentence. My admiration for the great Eastern philosophers is as genuine as my attitude towards their metaphysics is irreverent. All right, I can relate with that. I don't know if I exactly. I wouldn't say I'm exactly the same in that regard. I do have great respect for the philosophers. But the thing that I'm irreverent toward isn't necessarily their metaphysics. I guess, if on a scale, if you're supposed to be super reverent towards someone's metaphysics, then you could say that I'm irreverent, surely, but I'm not like actively irreverent like an atheist or something. Okay, continuing. I suspect them of being symbolical psychologists. Right. So this is, a lot of people, Jung, like I've said before, is a good bridge between the metaphysical and the ephemerally based. In other words, the people who only believe in things that the senses. They don't want people to think that you believe in, they got traumatized, like, yes, Santa Claus. Say, you believe in Santa Claus? Ha ha, yeah, I bet you believe in the Easter Bunny. Ha ha ha, you believe in Jesus? Well, Jesus is really, you should believe in Jesus, Like, people get fucked up as a child by that shit, and people conning people and, I can't believe it. Do you feel it? Do you feel the spirits? There's no spirits. I'm making this shit up. Ha ha. And so you take that child and make them grow up. And then if you want to introduce them to, anything, then you have to do it by way of Jung and say, these things, yes, they're all in your head, but things in your head are important, like say, things in that guy's head made him kill people. So you really ought to look into these things that are in your head. Well, how do I find these things in my head? Well, here's a book, read about it first, the things in Carl Jung's head, a lot of them were Nordic. I'm not that interested in Nordic things, and so those things aren't in my head as much. Maybe they're in the collective unconscious that I am tapped into. Could be, sure. Yeah, the English language has a lot of roots and a lot of assumptions that maybe go back before Christianity, back to the Nordic way of thinking, but never mind. I'll just keep reading. Okay. So Carl Jung is coming out and saying what we already knew, that when he looks at metaphysics, he's like, this is symbolic of a psychological process. So this is, it's real and it's important, but it's not what they say it is. It's not a god. It's not anything going on out there. It's going on in the collective unconscious of humanity, or of some subset of humanity, culture or whatever, right? Okay. Continuing. If it were really metaphysics that they mean, it would be useless to try to understand them. That's an interesting statement. Sometimes he explains himself, so we'll keep reading and see if he does. But if it is psychology, he's not going to explain himself, is it? Okay, we can not only understand them, but we can profit greatly by them, for the so-called metaphysical comes within the range of experience. Yeah. It's also the tip of the iceberg. You could say, a person could say that the human psychological projections that are connected to these beings or archetypes or whatever are the tip of the iceberg. But yeah, it's an interesting thing you said. If it was really metaphysical, then understanding it would be useless. Maybe, depending on how you mean, what you mean by useless and what you mean by understanding. My dad had a similar idea in Transformations, that understanding is a flesh-placed fear junkie mind game equivalent to... What's the quote?
Understanding is a flesh-placed fear junkie mind game, equivalent to verbal stereotyping with a hope attached to it that somehow some comfort release will come from a given verbal or mathematical formula, and that it will end happily ever after right there.
Thank you, Editor Edward. So there's that, but also use. Well, yeah, I use Capricorn, right? Is cardinal Earth. So using is a thing you do generally in the physical universe, though it can be a mental or an emotional thing to use something, right? Or use somebody, or use an idea. Yeah, I'm going to use that idea, like Carl Jung's using the metaphysical idea to tap into the psychological, you could say. So use and understand make that sentence possibly not absurd. Okay. Here's to possibly not being absurd. If I accept the fact that a God is absolute and beyond all human experience, he leaves me cold. Okay. That jives with a Western philosophical understanding of certain aspects of God, but this time he made it lowercase. All right, whatever. Yeah, if there's a great being out there that has nothing to do with humans, I don't know. I think that right there is a reflection, or an octave, let's say, a harmonic maybe of his approach toward human cultures and their ideas and philosophies. In other words, like, kind of, a little bit. He's thinking, okay, I am white, I am European, you are Chinese. Therefore, your world's got nothing to do with mine. But then he's having a realization and saying, wait a minute, we're both human. We both have eyeballs. Oh, there's some things we have in common. And us here in 2025 are patting him on the head saying, yes, Carl, yes, Chinese people and white people have a lot in common. Yes. But the assumption that he had in the beginning of that they have nothing in common, which he may have shared with many of his bespectacled intellectual peers, right, reflects a similar attitude toward, if it ain't human, I ain't interested. It's like, well, there's other worlds beyond the human. Why ain't interested? There's a whole universe out there just in this physical plane where there's things that are not human. I ain't interested. Even on this planet, Carl, there's plants, there's animals, there's mushrooms, there's funguses, there's crystals, all having experiences that are completely different from the human experience. Well, if it's got nothing to do with the human experience, then I ain't interested. Tell me what part of my psychology is related to that amethyst. It's your lust. Now I interested. That wasn't his accent, but might as well have been. What am I talking about? I don't know. But yeah, there's infinite, bazillions, honeycombs within honeycombs of worlds beyond this one. I mean, beyond this physical universe. And if you ain't interested, fine, don't be interested. It's your prerogative. But don't make it a universal for everybody that humans aren't interested. Well, generally, you could say, generally humans tend not to be interested in things that are beyond the human experience. You clearly aren't. But it's a little bit like, when you go to you go to like one of those Amish, communities and say, hey, you ever heard of New York? I ain't interested in no New York. You ever heard of anything? I ain't interested in no anything if it ain't putting up another whatever on the Amish do, okay. So, continuing. I do not affect him, nor does he affect me. Let's quote my dad again. Ego identifies with whatever is going on as itself, and whatever is out there or inside the flesh tube as either aiding, attacking, or of no consequence. Yes, so ego in my dad's usage of the word in that context can be defined as Carl Jung. Okay, continuing. But if I know that a God is a powerful impulse of my soul, well, yeah, I mean, the gods tend to be, if you ask the priests and priestesses and shamans that talk about gods, that they do. Whether they're psychological or beings in the metaphysical, whatever. Yeah, both. They both affect you, so you should be interested. But I would venture to say that a person could be interested in things that don't affect them. Why not? Why not? You ever read fiction? But if I know the right, yes, at once I must concern myself with him, for then he can become important, even unpleasantly so. Yeah, we know how unpleasantly so it can be for you, my friend. And even in practical ways. Yeah, you can come up with a whole system of psychology and make a name for yourself. For example, in his case. Which sounds horribly banal. But what did your soul say? Something about the banal. The banal is the element I breathe in, or whatever, something like that. Anyway, I'm not going to make Editor Edward go chase after that one. He's got enough to do sifting through that 2.5 hour long transformations video. like everything belonging to the sphere of reality. Everything belonging to the sphere of reality is banal, Carl? I think you need to get out more. Was this before you started doing things and going places? The reproach of, quote, psychologism, end quote, applies only to a fool who thinks he has his soul in his pocket. That's not your soul, Carl. Oh, maybe it is. I don't know. I mean, not the one we've come to know. Not the. Hi, Carl. That'd be weird if that was his penis. Carl. Okay, anyway. There are certainly more than enough such fools, because although we know how to use big words about the soul, in quotes, the depreciation of psychic things is still a typical Western prejudice. Yeah, that you embody very well. And then talk about from the outside. I mean, I get it. If I make use of the concept, quote, autonomous psychic complex, end quote, my reader immediately comes up with the prejudice. Yeah, I think that this kind of ties in with what I was saying before about how he's got his reader very much in mind as he's writing. It'd be interesting to see what he would write if he were writing for himself on this topic. Quote, maybe I don't know how long, where it went 1914, 15, 16, and we're already up to here. Maybe he gets up to 1930s while he's writing his black books. We'll see. And we'll find out what he really thinks about all this. Maybe not. What? My reader immediately comes up with the prejudice, quote, nothing but a psychic complex, end quote. Yeah, I thought that's what you were doing, Mr. Jung. How can we be so sure that the soul is, quote, nothing but, end quote? Good question. Why not apply to that question to everything else in the multiverse that you have put in the category of things I ain't interested because they don't affect me? It is as if we did not know, or else continually forgot, that everything of which we are conscious is an image, and that image is psyche. It's God, psyche. What's that? It's a word, it means stuff. Editor Edward, could you give us all the definitions and stuff about psyche?
Psyche, noun, plural, psyches, the human soul, mind, or spirit, according to the Oxford Languages Dictionary via Google. In Greek and Roman mythology, Psyche is the goddess of the soul, often depicted with butterfly wings. The name Psyche means soul in Greek. She is known for her extraordinary beauty, which sparks jealousy from Aphrodite, and led to a series of trials and ultimately her union with Eros.
Thank you. The people who think God is depreciated, if he, with a capital H, is understood as something moved in the psyche, as well as the moving force of the psyche, that is understood as an, quote, autonomous complex, end quote. These same people can be so afflicted by uncontrollable effects and neurotic states of mind that their wills and their whole philosophy of life fail miserably. All right, interesting, go on. Is that proof of the impotence of the psyche? There's only one way to prove impotence. Thank you, Mel Brooks. And the actors in that particular scene. Should Meister Eckhart also be reproached with psychologism when he says, quote, God must be brought to birth in the soul again and again, end quote? Let me just double check something real quick. I hope you don't mind. Yeah, so this is Transformations by my dad, the book that I've been quoting here and there. And no, Earhart. Right. Earhart was the Earhart Seminars training guy. Eckhart. Editor Edward, who's he talking about?
I think he's referring to the 14th century German priest, theologian, Eckhart von Hochheim, commonly known as Meister Eckhart. He was born near Gotha in the Landgraviate of Thuringia in the Holy Roman Empire.
Thank you, Editor Edward. Okay. Should Meister Eckhart also be reproached with, quote, psychology? We read that already. I think the accusation of, quote, psychologism, end quote, is justified only in the case of the type of intellect which denies the nature of the autonomous complex and seeks to explain it rationally as the consequence of known causes, that is, as derived, as not existing in its own right. I feel like Carl has gone on all different sides of this idea. And it's interesting. I mean, and it kind of ties into the theory that I had last time where he'll state a thing and I'll go, what? No. And then he'll criticize the thing he just stated and debunk it. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I was saying. Why do you say stuff and then knock it down? This latter judgment is just as arrogant as the, quote, metaphysical, end quote, assertion which, overstepping human limitations, seeks to entrust a deity outside the range of our experience with the bringing about of our psychic states. Sure, maybe. I don't know. I think that one of the things about metaphysicism is and here I go doing the thing that I just said Carl does, is when people speak with great authority about things that cannot be known and dupe people who are curious because it cannot be known and they would like to know into believing that this human's mouth is the source that they've been looking for of all this unknowable information. That's what you call some bullshit. And, I mean, it's not always a cult. Sometimes it's just one asshole and one person being duped by the asshole, If the asshole is successful, it becomes a small cult. So that's annoying. But it has nothing to do with the existence or non-existence of anything metaphysical in reality. Never mind. All right. Therefore, it seems to me, it's interesting, like what we do, like reading Ibn Arabi, reading Martin Luther, reading maybe Carl Jung too, is we're exploring the stuff that came out of the mouth of people who act like they understand things that cannot be known, more than others, in order to find what's in it. I think partly because I can kind of relate with being in the zone, you might say, or, channeling the Holy Spirit, someone else might say. The product of, meditation, or whatever, like deep prayer, these sort of altered, getting out of the banal, the brainwashing and the dogma, or within it. That's the thing, is somebody who's well versed, well imprinted with a certain type of cultural dogma from one place versus another. You put them both in a cave and have them meditate for a month, and they come out and they have different things to say. Yeah, that's interesting. Let's explore that. Not just like, yeah, that's stupid. Anyway, it has nothing to do with me. Don't affect me. I don't mean to do a mocking voice. Yeah, sure. If it doesn't affect you, if you're not interested, be not interested. I just say it's okay to be interested. Especially if you've got some time on your hands, into it. Different people are into different things. There's bronies, for fuck's sake. So I think it's okay to be into Ibn Arabi and Carl Jung. He wrote himself a huge footnote. It's always fun when authors write footnotes for themselves. Like, what I said here, I meant this. And it's like, okay. Instead of rewriting it. No. All right, continuing. Psychologism. Psychologism is what? Overstepping human limitations seeks to entrust a deity outside our range of experience with the bringing about of our psychic states. Did we already read that? Yeah. Psychologism is simply the counterpart of metaphysical encroachment, and just as childish as the latter. Okay, yeah. I like it when Carl and I are on the same page. We have these, and it's rare when we're reading this, but I dig it, yeah. That to say it's all in your head is childish. To say, no, man, don't you know? It's all real, man. It's all metaphysical, and it's out there, and it's beyond us, is also childish. So what does he propose as a third option? Therefore, it seems to me far more reasonable to accord the psyche the same validity as the empirical world. Yeah. And to admit that the former has just as much reality as the latter. Yeah. Maybe more. There's more direct experience with the stuff that goes on in our head, especially considering, you see this color? Yeah, color's not a thing. It's in your head. The thing is, it's also in my head. So we have this shared reality in which color exists. In the real reality, light has different wavelengths, but none of them are blue or red. That's an us thing. That's a in here thing. So that's what I mean when I say we have more direct experience with the human mental realm than we do with the physical realm, right? We only interact with the physical realm through the mental realm, if you can call them realms. It's a little weird to use words like realms. It's a little bit of a throwback to earlier times, the imperial feudal language models. What are we talking about? Therefore, it seems, yes. As I see it, the psyche is a world in which the ego is contained. Right, yeah, you and your mandalas. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm happy to finally, because I remember back when I was still locked into the Golden Dawn dogma, and I was like, I've got the tree of life. I've got it all, the paths of the Sefer Yetzirah, the Enochian stuff, the element stuff, all these different stuffs, and I was kind of only interested in things that resonated with the dogma that was in my head. And someone showed me the Red Book, and they were into it, and I was like, what is this? What? Well, this is the old man that Carl Jung used to talk to in his dreams or whatever, and he was an important figure for Carl Jung, and this little girl is, and this broken egg and this serpent is he was in the underworld, and I'm like, I used to respect Carl Jung, and they're like, no, he was into the occult. I'm like, what's occult about this? Unless you use the word occult as a category that means everything except for church and school, everything except for science and religion in the most conventional sense. What else is there? Well, there's rummaging around in the basement going, that's a cult. Is it? I guess maybe it is, but yeah, no. My point is, I'm happy to finally have some idea of what the fuck Carl's talking about and why it might be relevant post 1930 for the development of our post meta modern thinking or whatever. Not that it's a good thing, but no, I like it. It's interesting to recognize myself in it in certain times and places, and infuriating when I find something that doesn't fit. But that's a me problem, isn't it? Perhaps there are also fishes who believe that they contain the sea. Oh, hang on. As I see it, the psyche is a world in which the ego is contained. Perhaps there are also fishes that believe that they contain the sea. It's interesting. I'll see where it's going, but who are you to say they don't? That's what I'm saying. No. We must rid ourselves of this habitual illusion of ours if we wish to consider metaphysical statements from the standpoint of psychology. Okay. As I see it, the psyche is a world in which the ego is contained. So is he saying that other people think that the psyche, that the ego contains the psyche, and that's as silly as saying that the fish contains the sea, but in reality, the sea contains the fish and the psyche contains the ego? I think that's what he's saying. Okay. We must rid ourselves of... Yeah, we said that. All right. I don't know. I don't know. I'll read a bit more. A metaphysical assertion of this kind is the idea of the, quote, diamond body, end quote. I remember I had an allergic reaction the last time he mentioned it, but today I don't have one. The indestructible breath body, which develops in the golden flower. Oh, okay. So there's maybe some crossover, or at least some language crossover between... Because diamond body is a Vajrayana thing, but Secret of the Golden Flower is a Taoism thing, but with a bit of Buddhism and whatnot mixed into it. So, yeah, I don't know exactly what the mixtures are, the portions, but still it's interesting nonetheless. I mean, and in that same sense, like people get upset about the atheist Buddhists, but there are atheists who can greatly benefit from a Buddhist path, and they will never take any of your Vajra this or your Dorji this or any of that stuff seriously, ever, in a million years. And in fact, the more you talk about it, the more they think that Buddhism is stupid. And eventually they'll just be like, you know what, I'm just going to go back to being suicidal at work. I'm just going to go back to drinking. Fuck this. Fuck all these assholes, on the internet telling me, no, Buddhism has gods. Buddhism's just as fucking stupid as Christianity, I swear, Let them be Buddhist atheists. Let that exist. And if you want to pull up scriptures and say, no, see, even in Zen Buddhism, see, there's a reference here. He made reference to a god or something. Therefore, it's incorrect to say that, no, it's not emphasized. And if there's a new form of Buddhism that developed when Alan Watts' words touched the ears of folks in the West, and they developed a system with the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, and it's different from Vajrayana, obviously. It's different even from Japanese Zen. It's different from Chinese Chan, but it respects and looks up to and derives elements from, those aspects that they're not allergic to. Let that new form of Buddhism come into existence without shitting on it because it's white. You racist? I know. You can't be racist against white people because it's systemic. No, systemic racism is systemic. If you shit on something because of the ethnicity involved, you're an asshole. I mean, at the very least, even if you want to argue with me about whether you're being racist, you're being bigoted. And it's, against yourself. I know it's white Buddhists talking shit to other white Buddhists, and it's annoying. It's fucking annoying. It's so annoying, I went to the other side of the planet to get away from you fuckers. All right. That wasn't the only reason. I'm being hyperbolic a little bit, but it is annoying. Okay, so I'm going to close now, and a metaphysical assertion of this kind is the idea of the diamond body, the indestructible breath body, which develops in the golden flower or in the square inch space, which is right there. And that's where we're going to close today. In fact, we're actually going to start with that line, because that's the beginning of a paragraph, and it looks like it's interesting. It looks like it's going to go an interesting place, but this episode is already, I think it's almost an hour, isn't it? And, well, it was what it was. It is what it is. I don't know. Sometimes, like what happened last time, the Nag Hammadi, I felt like Gwydion was a little too irreverent, a little too irritable, a little too reactive, a little too this and a little to this, a little to that, a little to that. And so when BT did Martin Luther, he was like, okay, we're just going to take it on the level and the spirit with which it's given. And as a result, there's a lot of like exoteric Christian folks who are watching it and kind of like not hating it. And so I don't know, I think I'm doing something wrong. No, it's okay. It's okay to show that face too. It's a little embarrassing for me to show that face. But today was today. It was what it was. It is what it is. It was a bit mercurial, I'd say, the flow. I hope the music was good. And the good news about me talking a lot is that there's still going to be some more to read. If I had done nothing but read, we might have finished the book today. So, we've got some more to save for next time. And we've got to tap into the sage. That doesn't necessarily mean go walking around looking for a know-it-all, but to quiet the mental chatter and to connect with the inner guru, like Martin Luther says, right? You got to listen for the Holy Spirit and do what it says. No, I mean, yes, but also that's risky, So it's like if you're talking to hundreds of millions of people, it might be better to just say, just follow these rules. Just no killing, no adultery, It might be safer to do that rather than tell 100 million people, like, listen to the voice in your head, and it's right. But aside from the fact that that's an irresponsible thing to say to hundreds of millions of people, I'm not talking to hundreds of millions of people. So just for the sake of you and I, quiet the mind. And I would just say, if there's something that comes along when you get semi-quiet, and it's like, okay, now that your mind is quiet, here's the truth in images and words. No, that's still the mental monkey. That's the monkey pretending to be the guru. The monkey pretending to be the sage. Keep going. Keep digging. And remember, as it is said in the what sutra is that? The Suryangama Sutra, Volume 8. If he does not think he has become a sage, then this will be a good state. But if he considers himself a sage, then he will be vulnerable to the demon's influence. I love that. I recommend it. If you haven't heard that, I'll point you to the one I did on Buddhist books. It was originally an Esoteric Nerd episode, but then I repurposed it to be on Buddhist books. That's here. Suryangama Sutra, Volume 8. It's so good. I mean, I like it. There's aspects of it that I disagree with. I mean, there's areas in it where I can see, this, because it's a sutra that the Zen folk like. And at times it seems to be talking specifically and directly about certain Vajrayana folk. So it's kind of like, well, this Vajrayana school doesn't really... but I don't know, that's the thing with schools is people are learning and discussing and every once in a while you get someone who just comes out and says, it's like this. There's this one fucking guy who annoys the hell out of me. But I won't talk about him today. He was the one that was like, in Bhutan, this guy was like, leave the molester in the Shambhala thing alone. He's gurus have needs too. Stop being woke. Like, fuck you, dude. And that same guy is very much out there, like saying, Western people don't understand Buddhism. Buddhism has God. So he's like, kind of like, when these folks are like, yeah, you stupid idiot who listens to Alan Watts and got into Zen and says Buddhism has no gods. Buddhism has lots of gods. They're like, because this one guy said, look into the guy that you're thinking is an authoritative source. The guy's a turd. Like, he's a serious turd of a human being. He's the reason why I kind of just left Buddhism behind for a few years before I finally decided to reclaim it and put on the robe and start Buddhist Books podcast. So he had a role to play in my life, but it's different than the role he plays in yours. So that's it. We're done. Is there anything else? Well, nothing I can think of. That's nice. That's nice. It's good. I mean, one thing that this, I don't know what it was like for you, but for me, this was an emptying out. Now I feel like I'm empty of a lot of the stuff. Now that I've said it out loud and it's on the record, I don't ever have to think it again. That's the best part of episodes like these for me. I hope it was all right for you too. Was it good for you too?